We're live again. Thanks for joining me today. Where to start? This is important, really important. First things first. Last week, I mentioned that we were going to call our broadcasting, our media, beyond GTM. A bit premature, it was taken. So before I went any further, I set up GTM Reset, which I thought was actually better, a bit kind of more apt, and so that's what we're going with. So I've got the both the domain names. So we've got the .com and .co.uk. So there we have it. What I want to do, the first thing I want to do, is you could say I want to frame what we're actually doing here at salesXchange. So at the end of the day, there's a serious problem that has affected B2Bs for decades in generating new business. So for all the marketing SaaS we've all bought over the years, it hasn't worked. We know it hasn't worked. And there's also like an obvious and you could say known disconnect, which is how marketing is presented to CEOs and buyers and how we as CEOs and buyers actually buy. So addressing this problem, you could say, requires confirming what the issues are, communicating the strategies that will align to buyers, and finally presenting what we call our operating system that will change how your business functions and increase profitability. So, I mean, as you can imagine, to transform B2B or the B2B sales and marketing infrastructure and industry is a pretty serious business at the end of the day. And what we're doing is we're saying out loud what businesses and salespeople have been thinking for years. But not only are we saying it, we've done something about it. So if you're interested in flipping your profitability and changing the way that your business functions and operates, you're so in the right place. So I guess let's kind of get started, yeah? So what I want to talk about today is visibility. And we've got a variety of things that we're going to go through. We'll probably put this slide up a bit previously, but we want to talk about visibility, and I'd say that most B2B companies overestimate their own visibility because occasional campaigns do not count as market presence. And a lot of B2Bs output sporadic content, so they kind of get paid spikes in activity and naturally have an outbound limit. And so they've got or are limited to event-dependent visibility. So I hope that makes sense, yeah? So if your entire total addressable market doesn't see you consistently, you are structurally invisible. And if that's the case, I mean, your competitors will own the narrative, and possibly they'll own your chosen market too. So the other problem we got, which is it's not particularly nice, but it's another problem when we have to face it kind of head on, which is the attitude of too long didn't read. And by that, excuse me, and by that, I mean, it's like this mentality of, especially in B2B marketing circles, it doesn't really matter anywhere else, but it's so destructive as it assumes that we as CEOs have got the attention span of a goldfish. And whilst we all know about kind of like the 30 to kind of 60-second elevator pitches, so come on, get it done quickly, just get on with it. That's relevant to somebody who is trying to impose a sale but not earn the sale. So, over the past 20 years, it's always been about keeping content short, with low effort for not even podcasts or video or live streams, but a gated thin content and low exposure, low effort, low posting, quick engagement and so on. And the whole, you could say like the forced webinar registration and its reliance on pay-per-click. And the thing is, it's not just reliance on pay-per-click, it's the pay-per-click to landing page which activates demand gen. So this whole attitude does nothing to align with a business, to align the vendor's business with the buyer. And it's my opinion, it treats the buyers like fools. But that's so there's a dual thing going on here. There's a problem and there's an attitude. So we want to look at and see what are we going to expect. So in today's show, yeah. So what I want to do is I want to make sure. I don't want to sound too twee about this, but I want you to learn something today, and it's really important. And I think it'll be the beginning of a significant change for your business. And the crux of it, meant nicely, is how you're going to trounce your competition. And it all starts with the smallest piece of information. And you could say that we've all been listening to this same narrative for the past 20 years. But that's going to change. So this week, I want to cover what it means to achieve visibility at scale. And I want you to see why this is completely achievable and what it will do to your business. And I think that to start this off kind of smoothly, I guess, is I mentioned last week about just kicking off with a bit of news first. And something that's kind of relevant. And there are so many things that do happen in the world of B2B that it's important to include these. Like I said earlier, we've got to talk about what's going on, so we're accurately framing it. We're framing what we're talking about, what I'm talking about, and what salesXchange is all about. So we look at some news and something that's kind of relevant to business generation. So you've heard of Clay. So I read this week that Clay wants to own the sales and marketing workflows, and it wants to own the end-to-end process and acting as an AI-powered no-code operating system that sits between its raw data sources and CRM execution. So here's what GPT says. Bit summarised, but it's what GPT says about Clay. It's a low-code web scraping, lead scoring, reverse IP lookup platform with a high learning curve and potential high costs based upon its credit-based system for enrichment, data enrichment, and AI actions. So Clay's attempting to transform into a system of action that makes traditional or manual sales operations obsolete. So you get that. Yeah, I see what they want to do. But Clay, along with a lot of other businesses, are adapting AI to replace the grunt work or the manual work businesses believed they need to undertake, and they believe they have to undertake this when it comes to selling. And I say, long may that continue, because that's the entire problem in a nutshell. So the more businesses like Clay and Instantly and N8N, not so much N8N because of AI, but and AI automation keep going around the same treadmill, the longer the B2B industry will stay in the 1950s. And I said this before. The fact that if any business wants to identify or combine business and personal information in order to instigate an introduction, leaves me cold. I mean, it's seriously intrusive. But the process to de-anonymize website visitors can only be done by knowing the visitor's IP address and matching that data with something else, like consumer e-commerce data. because that carries with it mobile numbers and names and addresses and so on. So if you thought retargeting ads were bad enough, it's a whole nother level. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, someone contacting you because they know that you bought something for your family or whatever, think of what it does to prospects, to our prospects. But I would say Clay's approach shows the embedded mentality that salespeople have to go out and find a business to create their own market. And you could say from an aggressive standpoint, it worked in the past, but not anymore. And our view is, if it were that easy, everyone, including HubSpot and Salesforce and everybody else, would be doing it. There'd be no discussion. Yeah, but the thing is, data enrichment is about identifying people who have moved jobs and any other kind of possible marker that would indicate some kind of change. But think about this for a moment. So you can easily imagine, excuse me, you can easily imagine a CEO surrounded by his team, discussing these possible changes, what they're going to do in the business and so on. Does anybody really think? Let me just put this back here. Does anybody really think that they haven't thought about software or hardware or people requirements to accompany this future change or growth or development or transformation, whatever you want to call it? They don't need a salesperson to pitch up and tell them how to run their company. And that's, I don't know. I've always had a bit of a problem with this, because we have to look at how we perceive our prospects, and this attitude and I suppose approach to direct B2B selling is based upon believing the prospect is a mark, and a mark's a term that Griffiths use. You've seen Ocean 11 or the hustle, right? B2B, a lot of B2B companies believe salespeople are actually enforcers of sales, thinking that they can make it happen. It's not about allowing the buyer to buy. And I've sold millions of pounds worth of tech, SaaS and services. And I know firsthand, as you do, that the moment you walk into a prospect's office, you are there to serve. You are not controlling the situation. You're not supposed to. I mean, you like this. I heard this story it was a while ago. I sold a four-site telephone system network to a large dairy company. And I was told that a well-known and apparently shady insurance salesman visited them to do a presentation. And he made some really outlandish claims that made the owner say, and I was told this by the CFO who was there, is the owner said, "So how on earth are you going to achieve all that then?" And his response was just gold. He said, "You make the yogurt and I'll make the money." And he was kicked out, never to return. But it's this attitude. I mean, that's what's there. And agreed, we're not shop assistants, and yeah, we may well have a great deal of experience in our respective fields. But, and I mean, it's a big but. If one has a superior or arrogant attitude, you'll fail. Some might fall for it. But what you're after is, you don't just want a sale, but you want longevity. You already know what the customer acquisition cost is, the CAC, but now you're looking to achieve the lifetime value, the LTV. And the reality is, no one wants really to be forced into employing a load of customer success teams just to keep the customers sweet. Yeah, so they keep paying. But the last thing you want is investors challenging you while your annual recurring revenue is dropping. And that, as you can see that figure there, it's sort of 90 odd grand, is not enough, and it's not sustainable. Yeah. And as everyone knows from the previous SaaS high company values compared to today's lows, I mean, they're down like 70, 80, 90%. But the fact is, Everything in B2B emanates from the first asset your prospect sees, not the phone call. Yeah, it might be the first social post they saw or an email they might have dismissed, but it's always an asset. But at the end of the day, something registers in the back of their mind. Yeah, they've seen a banner, they've seen something on the news feed on LinkedIn or something, but they couldn't delete it, didn't delete it, but they noticed it. And that's what this is all about, this visibility thing. The dance, like the dance continues. And that is this register in the back of their mind. That is the best they're going to get. You're going to get. There's nothing wrong with it. But what we're talking about now is about scale. And if you think about this just for a minute, yeah, a luxury brand does not blindly cold call you. It doesn't request full contact details on their website forms so that it can call up and arrange a meeting with you. I mean, could you imagine Louis Vuitton prospecting an area, trying to find people that had enough money to buy their latest product? It's just not happening. But I will say, though, got to bear this in mind, that you are competing with the likes of certain luxury brands, but not how you think. You're actually competing for eyeballs on screens. But that's another story. We'll get around to that. Another live show. But you can see how B2B go-to-market companies believe they need to kind of double down, thinking that they can capture more of their market. And it's the same as getting cold called. People are still cold calling by telephone. Yeah, like taking all this technology and injecting it into, meaning AI technology, and injecting it into something that didn't work. I got cold called the other day. Is it Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday. And it started talking. I went, "Oh, hello, AI." And they replied, "Yes, I am an AI. Thank you for noticing." So the technology is great. But AI or not, you still can't stand anybody cold calling us on our mobiles, because as CEOs, we see it as an intrusion. So there is a logic there of getting technology to do the donkey work in this respect. And but it is, like I said, it's simply scaling up an already bad, and I think actually detested process. Nobody likes cold calling. So we want to get onto the kind of the main subject. Yeah, the main subject is visibility at scale. And I'm presenting this in like 3 segments to illustrate how to achieve exposure to a total addressable market. So first we've got a matter of the SEOs and large language models to understand where they fit into all this. So that kind of sets the scene. So the first segment, which is visibility, starts with you've got to create a reason for prospects to even want to notice or associate with you. Yeah. And the second part of that is you have to have the mechanics of reaching your desired total addressable market at scale. In other words, your physical efforts. So you might want to reach them, but you've got to have something that can actually make it happen. And there are some caveats, and we'll come on to that. And then finally, there's this orchestration, you could call it. You've got to call it orchestration, which is required to support all this workflow. And our ability to understand the data we're getting, and for that to help steer our business for future future decisions. So starting with SEO and an observation, there's something fundamental is happening in the way search engines work. And most B2B companies haven't noticed it yet, but for the past 20 years, I need a drink. For the past 20 years, search was essentially a keyword matching exercise. That's the problem. Never mind. There's always a decision, you drink out of a cup, drink out of a bottle. Drink out of a bottle is not a problem, but it makes a noise. You drink out of a cup, you can't, especially if you're drinking water, you can't see where it is. Anyway, so for 20 years, we've been doing this thing which is like a, I suppose, a keyword exercise. Yeah, keyword matching exercise. You type a phrase into Google. Google looks for pages containing those words, and then it ranked them based upon things like, it ranked the page that you got to see on things like backlinks, domain authority, and keywords that appeared on the page. And then you got your search engine results page, your SERPs. So that's all pretty straightforward. And then we know that that's what created the entire SEO industry. So people started engineering content for the algorithms, not writing content or creating content for people. So the whole keyword density, keyword cluster, the 3,000 word ultimate guides, that kind of thing. So in reality, a lot of content was simply written in an attempt to manipulate the search engines rather than actually help the reader. But that era is coming to an end. So nowadays, search engines are not looking for keywords. They are trying to understand the meaning. And this shift started a while ago with updates like, so you've got Hummingbird, Rank Brain, and then Google BERT and MUM, and so on. And those changes introduced these natural language processing into search. So instead of asking the kind of, does this page contain the keyword, the search engines began asking, does this page actually answer the question? So it might sound kind of a bit of a subtle difference, but it does change everything. So now we're kind of entering into this next phase, which is the large language models. And they're being integrated directly into the search engines. So systems like Google MUM and the new Google search, the generative experience optimization, or GEO, so it's not SEO, but it's GEO, means that the search engines are no longer just indexing pages, they're reading them. And they're analysing, well, what's the article about? What problem does it solve? And whether the explanation actually makes sense. And there are increasingly that the AIs are producing summaries directly in the search. I mean, you've seen it on Google. So the search engines, and we're talking Google here at the end of the day primarily, is becoming less like a directory and more like a research assistant. And so this has huge implications, because LLMs, large language models, are really good at spotting low-value writing. So it can detect, repetition, kind of thin explanations, templated content, or the sort of content that was created purely to get the page ranked. So what they now reward instead is expertise. So the content's got to kind of establish that kind of experience and insight and clear kind of explanations. Things like, original thinking and so on. So Google does summarize it with this, as you can see here, what they call EEAT, which is experience, expertise, authority, and trust. So in simple terms, the search engines are now asking a different question. Not does this page contain a keyword, but is this a credible source of knowledge? And so can you see how our reliance on search has framed our content and not the other way round, as it should be? So there's another shift, you could say, in what's happening in a way, behind the scenes. Yeah, you could say it's behind the scenes, and it's about topical authority. And it's the how they're looking at this analysis. So they're not just ranking a page, they're analysing a complete website, an entire website, and looking at whether the site consistently publishes meaningful material on a given subject. So, in other words, they're asking, is this website genuinely knowledgeable about this topic, or is it just producing SEO content? And that's why founder-led websites and specialist platforms are becoming more competitive, because they contain real thinking and not generic marketing articles. So if we bring it back to B2B, most B2B companies are producing content like the 10 benefits of cloud software, or the ultimate guide to digital transformation, or I don't know, 5 trends in customer experience. But they all of them are like properly optimized for SEO, but are all completely interchangeable. I mean, you could swap the company logos; nobody would know any different. And that's the kind of content. Well, that kind of content is the kind of material that AI systems now treat as low informational value, because it doesn't contain genuine insight. But this is where it becomes quite, you could say, quite interesting, because the alternative is what we're actually talking about. So instead of writing content to manipulate the algorithms, the search algorithms, you create and you publish content to educate your total addressable market. Because we know they, or we, want to self-serve, self-educate and remain anonymous before we speak to someone or speak to a vendor. So what you do is you explain the problems. You explain and you analyse the industry failures. You challenge accepted assumptions. You show people a different way of thinking about the issue. In other words, you build your knowledge authority. And when AI systems read that material, they recognise it as high value content. And so, the point is that we're talking about long form content, and you got to look at this. How long does it take people to read and engage with it? But you've got things like this, like we do now, live shows, podcasts, detailed analysis, and so on. Because all things like that, they contain context, they contain reasoning, and they contain the kind of thinking that can't be produced by keyword engineering or anything like that. So when these shows, for example, are published as transcripts and summaries and articles, the search engines can read them and understand the expertise behind them. That's why it's so important. So the bottom line is, search it's no longer about playing the algorithms. It's about demonstrating knowledge, which means the best strategy going forward is pretty simple. Educate your market, explain the problem, provide real insight, and keep doing it. Just stay consistent, because when AI systems read your content, they're not looking out for keywords. They're looking out for the overall understanding. And this is why, it's exactly why, visibility to a total addressable market is no longer about SEO. It's about building authority through education, which is precisely what we're doing pretty much every week. So the thing that, where does this start? It's going to start somewhere, okay? And what we want to do, say, we've got to look at this. Educational open access content. So assume you've got an open access website, which means you've got rid of all the demand gen forms. You've got a catalogue of educational and informative content. And, you've also stopped pay-per-click. You're not doing that anymore. So don't forget to do that. So the reason I kind of mentioned pay-per-click is because I won't click on them. I mean, you might, but I don't, because I know it will link to a form and link and demand my contact details before I get to see or read whatever it is, and we're back in the loop again. But as B2Bs, we can't rest on our laurels. and hope we can kind of build it and they will come, which is what's happened before. We have to engage in the promotional process and tell our intended audience that we exist. We've got to tell them our story, and we have to explain why we think they should engage with us before they buy from us. You've heard the expression, you don't get a kiss on the first date. Well, it ain't any different in business, and it never has been. Yeah. So you've got all this content. So you imagine you've got this repository. That's the icon for a repository, believe it or not. Anyway, imagine you have this big repository full of content. What you do next is identify the calls to action that would match any piece of content, any chosen piece of content. So if you were going to write a banner, like a banner advert of some description or a social post, what would you say that would make a CEO or prospect click on it and download and read or watch that piece of content? So you just have to think of that. So you might have a, I don't know, white paper, an article, blog, video, podcast, anything. It doesn't matter. But what's important is maintaining the purpose of distributing useful, engaging content. So in a way, it's more a case of write it and they will come. Yeah. So we've established that the important thing is to create the content in the first place. So now you've got this informative information. So this is where it starts to get interesting. The first thing you need to be aware is about repetition. It's really absolutely key, because lots of people think it's one and done. It's not. It's about repetition, and you recognise it from like television adverts, stuff like that get on your nerves. But there's method in their madness, and they know you get to remember the advert, and that's why the promoted products are at eye level in a supermarket. You may have heard it before, maybe not. I don't know. There was a scientist guy called Robert Zajonc, and he discovered that animals. If animals saw the same thing over and over and the other animal didn't eat it or eat them, it was probably safe. And he asserted the same thing happened with humans. There's another guy called Daniel Kahneman, who also discovered, or through research, that if we were exposed to the same thing over and over, and we became really familiar with it, we also begin to believe it's safe and won't do any harm. And what he did is he classified the other part of it. So if you had a quick thinking process and thought something was safe, he called that system 1, or thinking fast. System 2, of course, is the opposite, which is about being considered and doing research, which is called thinking slow. And you never believe it, you never guess, he's got a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. But that's why we all think marketing automation is safe, because we've been told the same thing over and over and over again by the Martech industry and all the marketer advocates, that it was the right thing to do. It was safe. And even though it doesn't work, we all keep paying and hoping for the best, because there's nothing else. Until now, of course, but there's nothing else. But as employers, we also expected our staff to think slow and do some research. If they did, we wouldn't all be using marketing automation platforms, for B2B, that is. Well, that's another conversation. So you see where I'm coming from regarding this repetition thing. So repetition makes people, they see it regularly enough and they think it's safe. So imagine you've got a PDF as a download and you've created it. So you create a PDF and you do a post on, I don't know, say LinkedIn, for example, and you would think it's one and done, yeah? You can't post another. Also, you can't post it another you can't do another post on the same day because LinkedIn will see that as spam. So to comply with LinkedIn, you leave it for a while. So let's say, to be on the safe side, you leave it for 30 days. So what do you do now in the meantime? Well, longhand, what you would really do is create another, not another PDF, but another post. And so you repeat the process manually, right? So you get the pictures, multiple posts, but still just promoting one PDF. But in reality, few businesses do anything like that because they think it's too labour intensive. Well, it is labour intensive. I know, I've done it. But most importantly, most GTM teams are not even aware that the whole repetition thing is a thing in B2B. So consumers have got it licked, but we haven't. So what I'm about to explain is going to change everything that you've been doing in B2B. It's going to sound a lot. Don't get phased. We've got a complete operating system I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So just bear with me. So I'm just going to talk through this, what has to be done. So I said right at the beginning that we have to talk about what the problems are, then talk about what's required to change that problem, to rectify it, and then the solution to execute it. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this repetition and the ability of sending information out. So this is what it looks like. Okay. So multiple different posts, each with their own call to action. So what happens here is you create daily posts per call to action asset. And in this case, they're downloads. Okay. So the idea is that you create these multiple posts that promote one download, but you don't create them in the normal way. You construct them in our system, but you construct them. And what you do, I've got to have another drink. I feel like I'm talking a lot today. Hang on a second. So, you create a top and bottom layer in the system. I'm not going to spill this time. Hang on. I think that's the thing with podcasts when you've got more than one person. So when the other person's talking, the other person that's listening can have a drink. So you don't create your posts in the normal way, and we've all done it before. You've got to go and find the image, do the image, put it on there, make sure it's unique, and do the text at the top and so on. But this is where it's clever. So you create the top and the bottom layer. The bottom layer is a solid image, and the top layer, which is a banner, which you may have seen, which is promotes our live shows, and the top layer is part transparent. Okay, and the system generates the middle title text layer. And the system does some other stuff. It does the post text and all the coding and call to action data, and uploads that into the scheduler. Now we also have, like I said before, we've got two call to actions here. So because of the nature of social posts, the main call to action is to download a PDF, and then you've got the live show banner at the bottom. But doing this, the best bit about it, to get 30 of these done, and there's a reason it's better that they're done this way anyway. They're all individual because we're creating different text layers. Bit of technical, should put a technical hat on and but what happens is it's called a checksum, and the checksum confirms whether it's the same image. That's how LinkedIn sees if you're spamming. But because all the text layers are different, it means the value of the image is different every time. So you're not spamming. But the best bit about it, you could do 30 of these, or I do 30 of these at a time, and it takes a few minutes. great. I mean, if you've done it manually and you do this and it gets automated, it's amazing. So that's the first thing. So then what we've got, we have out, here are the PDFs. If I just there are the PDFs. These are the posts that promote the PDFs. They're the posts that are promoting these call to action, these 3 PDFs we've got here. That top one's just an open book. So to put this into perspective, we have got, we've had over 500 downloads of these posts, these PDFs, 5 weeks. And I know that is outstanding for a LinkedIn campaign. There's more, okay? If we, I talked about 30 posts, you could do 30 posts. So if you imagine for one call to action download, so you've got one PDF and you're going to produce some posts for that. You're going to produce 30 posts for that in your track. So one track's got 30 posts and all of those posts are promoting that and enabling that PDF to be downloaded. You've then got multiple social media platforms. So 1 times 30 days times multiplied to the social media platforms. So you've got to, don't worry about doing the maths in your head. I'm going to get to the figure at the end in a second. So 1 times 30 times 5 social platforms. Okay. That's multiplied again by the staff and people in your company and your company profile. So 5 people in the company plus the company page. Okay. That adds up to 900 impressions in 1 month from just 30 posts promoting one call to action PDF. Now, LinkedIn allows you to post 20 times a day. So combined, it would achieve 18,000 impressions. That's 5 members of staff plus a company page. And if you had 16 in total, scary. 48,000 impressions in 1 month. Because it means one profile can have up to 600 pre-prepared graphics or assets. Just like that. And the reason you do it this way round is because, and so on, is because, with that many posts, is because neither you nor I could ever guess when our prospects are scrolling social media. So we just got to make sure that we're there every day, right? It makes sense. So this first part is absolutely set and forget. We've had ours up for months. You chop and change, have multiple different libraries. So we broadcast 4 live shows, which you probably know. And each month, we turn those live shows into 90 YouTube shorts. At the moment, we've got 480 posts going out. Yeah. So over the past 4 weeks, they've generated 24,000 impressions and 700 engagements. Just with a couple of channels. You got to process this. That's 1 month. So I could just leave this. The multiple posts cover every month. Don't touch them. Don't have to do anything. And then we've just got the impressions that we get, and however it gets, you choose to get it scheduled regarding your shorts, because we do the videos and then get them clipped up. So we get our messaging out there. It is beyond spectacular, and it's not done. It's just not done. And it's I can only, I suppose I can only, I only think I know why, I just don't want to say it. B2B marketing is a restricted environment. Is it lazy? Probably not. I think it's the do what you've always done and you get what you've always got. Nobody's jumping up and down. Nobody's getting fired. Apart from CMOs do get short shrift in a way, because I think the average employee of a CMO is normally about 18 months. Promise the earth doesn't happen, get someone else in. So you've got to kind of think about this explosive scale that we're talking about, and that's just to do with social media posting. And that was using 5 platforms. There are 10. Yeah, there are 10. So the next thing we've got to look at email, because that's the second part of the whole. So if we look at the social is first, email is second. And so, I'm pretty sure you should have a prospect database that aligns with your total addressable market based upon their SIC codes and postcodes and so on. And if you haven't got one, you need to go and get one as soon as possible, because you should have one. And it should be part and parcel of your CRM. But emails are sent out once a week to update your market about products, downloads, and the live shows. Then we've got the banners. So in conjunction with the emails, the third part is what we call SX banner. But the banners are displayed to the matched audience of your email database, the one like I just mentioned. So your total addressable market sees the emails once a week, sees the banners on their news feeds, and all these 3 things enable you to absolutely explode your visibility. It's like, but the imagery starts pattern recognition and not pattern fatigue, because the emails and banner images always have different pictures on them. But it doesn't stop there. The numbers are pretty staggering. And all it needs is for you to be aware of it. Because once you know, you know. Yeah, you can't. It's like, oh no, it's told me this. You can't go back. But there's a bit of a. I'm not going to call it a problem, but you got to be aware of this. There's the caveat that people don't talk about, and with all that work, you think it'd just be a matter of sitting back and waiting for all the leads to come in. But you'd be wrong, because there are different stages that we as CEOs go through. Yeah. So you could say. I suppose you could say there's like an unspoken filter that goes on within our businesses. And so the first thing is discovery. Us buyers, us CEOs, or your prospects start to see something different. So we just observe. Yeah, we might open a PDF. We might have a look if we don't have to give our details. We might scan some sections, read an exec summary. Might even visit your website. And then there's month 2. You've got the intellectual curiosity starts to build. We start thinking, it's quite good. I'll watch it again, read it some more or whatever. Might even watch a live stream. Oops, wrong one. Might even watch a live stream. Revisit the website, check out their profile, their LinkedIn profile. We start doing some internal comparisons. Because some CEOs begin comparing with what you're saying with their own, what's going on in their own organisation. They're asking themselves questions like, well, why is this happening? Or why is that happening? So then you've got month 4. It could be month 10. So you've got this like silent shortlisting. So it's not about you, but it's about the direction of thinking they now agree with. And then they're looking to find out now internally who's got the same mindset as they've got. But they still won't contact you. We still won't contact you. Not yet. And then there's stage 5. which is like the integral trigger. Something happens. I mean, it could be to do with people. Something happened to the business. Something financial happens. Who knows? But something happens, and that forces a business to do something. And this is where sales gets kind of the sales stages gets triggered. You've seen this before. This is the chevrons across the top. The typical sales stages. But this change could be simply something to do with their mission and strategy, which is on the left, the triangle on the left, pyramid on the left. Or it could be that point where that dotted line is across the middle, which is where education and learning transitions into buying. And that is this bit here. Let's get the old laser pointer out. This bit here, that's where it all kicks off. That's what does everything. Because around here this is your sales, this is your BDRs. Your BDRs are trying to find someone here at this point. Are you looking to buy X, Y, Z? And they won't talk to you because they've been learning from someone else. And that's the reason why telesales, cold calling, BDRs and so on, has got a 300 or 400 to 1 success rate. Because they're trying to find, I think that, they are the odds, it's 400 to 1, to find someone that's in the market at the time along that line. And the rest of that diagram shows the typical sales stages that salespeople use, especially in ABM. And like I mentioned there, silent engagement. They do, we are doing stuff that because we want to self-serve, self-educate, and remain anonymous. But the other part is 86% of the journey, the buying journey, is done without communicating with the salesperson. We all know that. So if 86% is on one side, if you look at the bottom of this graph, we've got right the way across here. If you think your sales stages is 9 months, it means that the silent process is up to 5 years. But then up to 5 years, that fits in with strategy. Fancy that. So what we're doing is we're fitting everything almost kind of neatly into these different boxes and joining these strands and bringing them all together. And that's where that's when the buyer gets to that point of stage 6, when they actually contact your organisation and say, I've been watching or reading or doing what for a while now. I can have a chat with someone. And that's how it is. It's always been that way. Because sales, how many times have I heard this? Sales has always been a numbers game. It's never changed. Never will. And the problem is that B2B companies have spent the past 20 years measuring, I say, the wrong numbers. Most firms measure the activity inside the pipeline. And they track cold calls and leads and open emails, CRM stages, yeah? But very few organisations measure the most important number of all, which is how much of their total addressable market can actually see them. So in other words, we obsess over like internal activity while ignoring this external stuff that's going on, which is visibility. There's nothing, but there's nothing new, nothing special. Sales has always been a numbers game, but broadcasting has always been a numbers game. Advertising has always been a numbers game. The difference is that B2Bs have never joined those numbers together. If you're aware of broadcasters, they solved the problem decades ago. So they kind of asked these straightforward questions like, how many people saw the programme? How often did they see it? Which slot performed best? Which creative asset held their attention? And what response did it produce? And while they were measuring audience size and frequency and performance, B2Bs were just counting cold calls and pipeline stages. So what we're doing now is we're just simply applying that same audience logic to new business development and tracking it. Yeah, from the first exposure that we achieve, that they get, to that commercial outcome. So once you start looking at the numbers this way, something kind of very obvious begins to appear. So instead of measuring activity inside a small pipeline, you begin measuring activity, or start measuring visibility across your entire total addressable market. And of course, you're creating this kind of continuous exposure to your total addressable market. Then you're monitoring the kind of the behavioural signals that follow that. So there's nothing clever, futuristic, or anything like that about this approach. It's just the same discipline the broadcasters and advertisers have used for decades. But just apply it to business revenue, business gen. So when you start measuring the market, you're able to visualize your position through very different lenses. So what we want to do is, just recap for a minute. So first you create this educational content and assets, and you teach, you don't sell, you teach your solutions, and you explain why prospects should buy from you. I mean, it's simple, right? I mean, we've been doing it for years. Next, you produce and distribute your social posts at scale. That whole kind of 600 posts per profile. And then all this outbound posting and content drives all this traffic. So all your posts, all your exposure drives traffic, not only to your call to action download, but to your weekly live shows. So the whole point is you want your total addressable market to get to know, like, and trust you again at scale. That's all you want. You don't want anything else. And you're probably going, okay, I see what you're saying. But if we're doing all this stuff at scale, how on earth would you get to manage it? How can you do this? We're talking thousands, tens of thousands of things that are being sent out and managed. And of course, that brings us to the salesXchange operating system. So the first thing to say is that it's not SaaS. It's local web and a telemetry server on premise, and partly in the cloud, but it's web servers. It's not marketing automation, SEO, social media, or content marketing, or anything like that. It's the entire B2B workflow every one of us has always known, inside out. But it's designed into a centralized, consolidated operating system that enables and orchestrates everything we as B2Bs have always needed. But I would say we have been too blinkered up to now by big tech Martech and their advocates to realise what was actually being, it's a bit harsh, but what's actually being done to us and our businesses. And I mean that, done to us. So if you look at this, a bit difficult for those who are listening on podcast, because that, and even for you might need to put this onto a larger screen if you're looking at this. But I'll read through it. Okay, I'll read through it. We have 4 main engines and 2 specific layers, and I'll go through them. First of all, we start at SX Reach. And that's a market and visibility engine. Okay. And we talked about that with social and email and banners. Next is Live, is a broadcast authority engine. So as a result of your efforts communicating outbound, where do they go? Anonymously? Currently nowhere, but with this, anybody can look and watch and get to know, like and trust you in their time and in catch up, but they can see you live. That's why I do this live. This is properly live. Yeah, it's be very easy to. I mentioned this kind of a few times. It's very easy to say, do you know what? Let's just do a video, because if it goes pear shaped, we can sort it out in editing before we actually push it out to the customers or to the big wide world, the thousands of people that watch it. What's the point in that? Anybody can knock out of it. I say anybody. Video's a video. Live is authentic. You know, you wouldn't spill your drink. You'd edit that out. So we've got this live. You've got you know me by now. I do go off at a bit of a tangent. So we've got this broadcast authority engine, and so that's your live shows. But we set up live shows, the live show studio in your office. So if you've got space, because you've got people working from home, if you've got space, would you take one of the offices, convert it into a studio, and then you can reach your hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of your total addressable market every week. Happy days. Okay. But we also, and I'll come on to that, how that we set up the remote studios for your salespeople, and that relates specifically to SX Connect. Now, SX Connect is I have to get this right, is the buyer orchestration engine. Okay. It's one of those things that that we as salespeople, business people, CEOs and so on have always wanted, which is a mechanism that can reach out and communicate to our enormous market, show them, present to them who we are, what we do, and so on, without anybody's involvement, to make ourselves attractive enough that they will come and watch us and get to know us, like us, and trust us. And when that trigger happens that I talked about before, they go, I'm going to speak to you. I want to get in touch with you. And you give them this mechanism that enables them to do that. I'll show you exactly in a minute. But that's what we've always wanted. And to have the ability to literally sit back and you go, oh look, more appointments, is having been in sales for 40 years, I know, oh look, an appointment, another one, oh there's another one, how interesting, look forward to speaking to them. It's special. I think that's all I can say. I'm going to come back onto that, but for the rest of the engine, so we've got Connect, which is the buyer orchestration. Then we've got Ops, which is the revenue telemetry. So every single thing you're doing, absolutely everywhere, no matter where it is corralled, is consolidated into the Ops. I'm going to mention it again in a second. We've got Hub and the Course. Course makes sense, and the Hub is an operational intelligence layer that's integrated with LLMs. So to show you how easy this is, the first phase of getting your data out to people, because we're talking about orchestration and kind of how do we manage this. You have your track input information, 3 text files generated by LLMs, just a text file, simple text file, plus your 2 image layers we talked about, produces that. Okay, that's the objective. Produces that information there, and you can see that's what we're going for, which is the multiple posts. Once you've uploaded your information, it brings you to this screen, which you look to generate, and you can see the image on the right. There's our post. Constructs the post like I showed before. Big green button at the bottom, processes it, constructs the image and uploads it to a library, and is posted out 1 per day until you stop it. Could be simpler. You can produce 20 of them. That'll take you a couple of days. And your exposure just goes through the roof. So, the whole thing about this is that we have to talk about these in kind of almost in these segments, these sections, these engines, these modules, because they make up the whole. Okay, and I think that I just want to move something along a second. To bear with me on this. Constructed okay, so we're this is one of the problems. So you can have all this technology, and you can say, right, well, you can talk about it, and you want it to be natural. You're looking at the screen, and you got there's lots of things going on. You go, I've missed my place. Where was I? Because there's lots of things. This right now, what I'm saying right now, not scripted. Of course, it's not scripted. There are other things, because you need to keep. You need to be kept on track to it as best as possible. So we get to the right point, and the prompter thing. The prompter kind of just keeps me on track of what's coming up next. If I go off piste and stop and then keep talking and move the slides forward, it's like, oh, what have I done? But the point is now is that we've got this situation, which is the let me stop. I'll get back on track now. I just showed you the information for social. So we've got this information going. We've got the constructed images. Almost identical process for emails and banners. Okay, but it's actually more simple. So they're slightly more ad hoc if you want them to be, as opposed to it just working in autopilot, because with social you're sending them out every single day and so on. So the next stage is live, and what we've got with live is what we're doing now. And like I said, in your case, we would set up a studio in your offices as long as you've got space. And if not, we'd organise a studio, one of our studios, or one that might be local to you. But I mean, that's the easy part. And we'd set up your remote studio with your salespeople so they can maintain delivery, the same level of professionalism that you are demonstrating at your office studio. And the reason for them having a remote studio is because of this next stage. So this is SX Connect. So at this point, so you imagine that you're generating a significant amount of exposure and visibility. And the most effective way to maintain momentum, obviously, is to capture your prospect whenever they're ready. So not just when they're watching you, but if they're on their website, on your website, and at whatever time they're engaging with you, because no one's going to, they're not going to do it between 9 and 5. It's whenever it suits them. So you've got this our form process, it's basically discovery data. I mean, these are the kind of questions on the discovery data that anybody would ask at their first meeting. But we do it in advance because it saves everyone's just loads of time. But it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing spectacular. It just cuts down the time you need to question your prospect when you first meet them. Like what are you doing, how much you're doing, what roughly what are you spending, and so on. So that's the first stage. So these people, these prospects have said, okay, well, we like you. We want to talk to you. So once they complete the form, they can book a meeting with anyone in your team. And the system will schedule the meeting based upon location, availability, expertise, and so on. And it's at that point, that the system, the operating system, carries out research on the company, on the individual, generates the proposal, generates a cost comparison, generates a slide deck, notifies the salesperson having booked a meeting in their diary, and it's delivered all of the meeting documentation as well. So none of your team ever have to get behind, no matter how many meetings are booked. And you can see this is designed by a salesperson because I know how long it takes. And then there's this. This is the executive view, which shows you all you'd want to know at a glance. So you can see the metrics like social, email. We've got social, email, banner, and live. And those 4 critical things, activities, lead to meetings booked, proposals generated, quotes sent out, and finally, ta-da, pipeline value, pipeline movement, and what the value is up to for that week or that month. I mean, I love it. Just what is there not to love about this? Just amazing. Just amazing. And then you've got the ops. You've got the ops. So you have to have your telemetry. You need to know what's happening for everything, and depending on which modules you want, we just pull this data in. So you've got this exposure on multiple platforms, so you can understand the visibility you're actually achieving. From the engagement to downloads to watch time to the actual meetings booked and so on, right the way through to pipeline generation. So there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it on the market. It's all script driven. It's not AI. It's script driven. There's a little bit of AI involved, but and the thing is like I said before, it's rather than looking at trying to what typically happens with analytics is looking at all these disparate Google related Google J4 stuff. It's like, show me the money. That's what this is about. You want to know, what are we doing? How well is it going? And like I said before, the kind of the fascinating thing about this is it's not a new invention. Nothing's new's been invented per se to make all this happen. The platforms exist, the analytics already exist, telemetry already exists, tracking already exists. The only thing that's changed is the decision to look at B2B sales through the lenses of market visibility rather than the lenses of campaign activity. And I think that you look at you look at this structure here. Instead of asking how many leads did we generate this month, you say, well, how much of our market is seeing us? We ask how often are they seeing us. We ask we want to find out what ideas attracted their attention. We want to ask what assets are generating engagement. And we can simply ask just what exposure is turning meetings into revenue. And once you start thinking about B2B, the way the entire, I would say the entire commercial picture becomes much clearer. Like I said before, sales is always been a numbers game. No one ever taught us how to manipulate or review those numbers. And so I think the best thing to say is all we're doing is we're just measuring the right numbers now. Yeah, and I think that the bottom line is that if we look at what we have to do is you imagine you've got this enormous content repository. And then you've got this exposure multiplication, which is processed or passed or has to be filtered through that buyer's stage, which ends up in your telemetry, your measurement telemetry systems in SX Ops. Yeah. So the point is that if you the impact this has is basically high volume exposure. Yeah, it's just it's massively high volume exposure to your total addressable market. You've got lower costs, increased profitability, higher annual recurring revenue, and a platform that, let's face it, I mean you've seen it, and a platform that is significantly easy to manage. And it also keep your CFO happy because of budget accuracy and accountability. So you can see, the ability to achieve this kind of visibility at scale towards an entire total addressable market is completely achievable, completely manageable, even drilling down to the granular detail that can identify individual successful assets. So, I mean, like I said before, there are 10 social platforms. I've no idea which ones you use or how many you use. But you just imagine the multiplication. So no matter who uses what or how many people you have working for you or whatever, everything's consolidated. Take all that data and information into BigQuery. And so that's all social, all YouTube, all analytics, Notion, email, LinkedIn, everything. As you can now slice and dice that data and drill down to understand exactly what's going on in your market, with your total addressable market, your outbound, what works and what doesn't. And this whole kind of consolidated effort puts you in control. Like just never before. And so the most important takeaway, you could say, is about reframing B2B new business development into this replicable, orchestrated process that is virtually set and forget. I mean, it's just, it's the best. And lastly, but not least, is this SX course, which is your gateway to executing this entire system because of retraining your go-to-market teams. And the course is available online, self-paced. Any number of people can do the course at the same time. So you can retrain your entire team. All at the same time, doesn't matter where they are, anywhere in the world. Which means you can exploit the benefits of the operating system far quicker than simply putting in a new system and trying to force people to use it. So you get them change the mindset first. So the key is that the go-to-market teams, you've got to change their thinking and change their understanding so they understand why it's not working. And it's just logic. And that's doesn't matter what transformation, a lot of transformation projects fail because of lack of buy-in. We've got this with self-paced. So it's certified, so CPD certified and so on. It's essential. But before, this is all part and parcel of a process that says this is what you can do. this is how it can work. So I hope all that makes sense. And I also hope that this is captured, you could say captured your imagination, because that's what you have to be able to visualize what could be. It's a bit of a sales ploy, isn't it? Just imagine this. But it's about imagine what could happen if your entire what you've been used to for your entire go-to-market infrastructure and marketing and SaaS and so on can completely change and deliver exactly what is required, which is massive exposure at scale for your prospects to get to know, like, and trust you at scale, to book meetings at scale, to execute those meetings at scale. And then my job's done here because the rest of it is down to how you implement it and do installation, everything else. But you just have, but that's all there is. There is no close. There is no, and we've got a special offer on this week. No, you have to process it. Just think about this. Everything's on our website. There's different, if you're listening to this on a podcast, great. There's previous podcasts. And this is an evolving category. B2B operating systems. Just search for it. Happen to be at the top. Why? And like I said before, when Google recognise a category and recognise that information and that expertise, they'll write AI-related introductions about it, and that's what we've got. So I hope you got something out of this today. Large website, lots of information, lots of content on there, all completely open access. The only form we got is if you want to have a meeting with us, and you can fill one of those out. Happy to speak to you. So I'll be back next Thursday, same time, same place, 11 o'clock. So join me then. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
If this changed how you think about GTM, you're just getting started. Explore the full Revenue Reset series and join us live next week.